I was sitting in a restaurant when I overheard my wife saying the most crushing things about me to another man. She called me pathetic, boring, nothing more than a walking ATM. She had no idea her husband was just a few booths away, quietly planning how to destroy her world. My name is Preston Wells. I'm 45 years old, and I run a logistics company with 63 employees across 3 states. For 2 decades, I built my business from the ground up, starting with just 1 truck and a dream. Today, I own a fleet big enough to move mountains if you can pay the price. I always thought I was building security for my family, but in reality, I was just painting a target on my own back. My wife, Claudia, and I have been married for 18 years. We have 2 kids, Daniel, 17, who's preparing for college, and Iris, 14, who still thinks her dad is her hero. At least I hope she still thinks that after everything that's about to happen. The night it all fell apart started like any other. I was at Romano's, a fancy Italian restaurant downtown, having dinner with a potential client from Memphis. It was a big deal, worth around $2 million a year if I could close it. I was tucked away in a corner booth with high backs, the kind that make you feel like you're in your own little world. That's when I heard her laugh. At first, I didn't even recognize it. It sounded sharper, more alive than anything I'd heard from Claudia in months. She had told me she was meeting her old college friend Sarah for dinner. But this didn't sound like a chat between 2 girlfriends. Then I heard her say my name, and my chest went cold. "Preston's so predictable it's actually painful," she said. Her voice had that smug tone she used when she thought she was being clever. "He thinks providing for the family makes him some kind of hero. Like writing checks is the same as being a real man." I should have stood up right then, walked over and confronted her. But instead I froze. My client across from me kept asking about delivery timelines while my entire world tilted upside down. Then I heard her again. "He's got no fire left, Dwight." The sound of that other man's name hit me like a freight train. "Dwight." She kept going, twisting the knife deeper. "No passion, no spontaneity, just work, 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 and those boring stories about trucking routes and warehouses. God, sometimes I feel like I'm married to a calculator." The man's voice was deep, confident, the kind of voice that made my jaw clench. He said, "So why stay? You're only 43, Claudia. You still have time to start over." Her answer was one word that cut me open. "Money," she said flatly. "Preston's built a nice little empire. Once Daniel leaves for college, I won't feel guilty about taking half of it. Honestly, Dwight, my husband is just a financial safety net at this point. I'm counting down the days until I can cash out." That was it. The worst thing I'd ever heard her say about me. And sitting there, with my client still talking about shipping schedules, I made a decision that would change everything. She'd never see me coming. I somehow got through that dinner. Don't ask me how. My head was spinning, but I kept talking, nodding, pretending. The Memphis client shook my hand and said he'd get back to me by Friday. He had no idea he'd just witnessed a man's world collapse in real time. When I stood up, Claudia was still at her table with Dwight, laughing and leaning in close. Even from behind, I could see it. The way she touched her neck, played with her hair. That wasn't a casual dinner with a friend. That was a date. I paid my bill, walked past their table, and got a good look at him. Mid-40s, athletic build, expensive suit. He looked like the type who drove a BMW and thought he was God's gift to women. He looked like the type who probably talked about his CrossFit routine at every party. Everything I wasn't. Neither of them noticed me walk past. Why would they? In her eyes, I was just a walking ATM with no personality. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring through the restaurant windows. They ordered dessert. She fed him a bite of tiramisu, and he reached across the table to squeeze her hand. Just normal couple stuff, except she was my wife and he sure as hell wasn't me. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Claudia. "Running late with Sarah. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you." 2 words that used to mean everything. Now they felt fake, like counterfeit money in my pocket. I drove home on autopilot, muscle memory guiding me through familiar streets, while my brain tried to make sense of what I'd just seen. Daniel was in his room doing homework, music slipping out from under the door. Iris was already asleep, her face calm in the glow of the hallway nightlight. They had no idea that their mother was about to blow up their lives for a midlife fling and a bigger bank account. I poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey and sat in my office, staring at the family photos on the wall. Our wedding day, vacations, Christmas mornings. All of it suddenly felt like a play, staged carefully, with me as the only one who didn't know he was performing. Claudia came home at 11:47 p.m. I heard her heels on the hardwood, the careful way she shut the door. She peeked into my office where I pretended to study shipping reports. "Hey, honey," she said, her voice bright and fake. "How was your dinner?" I looked at her, the woman I'd shared a bed with for 18 years, and saw a stranger. "Productive," I answered. "How was Sarah?" "Oh, you know Sarah," she said, waving her hand like it was nothing. "Same old stories about her ex-husband and her awful job. Poor thing never changes." The lie slipped out so smoothly I almost admired it. "I'm heading to bed," she added quickly, already halfway out the door. "Don't stay up too late with those reports." She leaned down and kissed my forehead. A gesture that once felt warm and real now felt like a pity prize. After she left, I stayed in that chair for another hour, turning over the same thought in my mind. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next morning, I did something I'd never done in 20 years of marriage. I called in sick to work and followed her. Claudia left at her usual time, 8:15 a.m., coffee in hand, that fake smile plastered on her face. She kissed the kids goodbye, said she had an early client meeting, and walked out like it was just another day at the office. I waited 5 minutes before leaving. I didn't take the company truck, too recognizable. Instead, I used my personal car and slipped into traffic behind her. Nothing fancy, just a husband gathering proof of what his gut already knew. She didn't drive to a marketing firm. She didn't even head downtown. Instead, she crossed town and pulled into a little coffee shop called The Daily Grind, the kind of place that charged $6 for what used to cost 50 cents. I parked across the street and kept my eyes on her through the cafe window. She sat in the corner, checking her phone every 30 seconds like a teenager waiting on a text. At 9:23 a.m., Dwight walked in. In daylight, he looked even more polished. Crisp shirt, expensive watch, that easy confidence of a man who's never had to worry about payroll or keeping 63 employees paid. He slid into the seat across from my wife like he owned the place. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I didn't need to. The body language said everything. Leaning in close, hands brushing across the table. Claudia throwing her head back in laughter at his jokes. This wasn't their first coffee date. This was a routine. They stayed exactly 47 minutes. I know because I timed it, sitting in my car like a bargain bin private investigator. When they finally left, they walked to their separate cars in the lot. But before they split, he pulled her close and kissed her. Not a casual goodbye kiss. This one lasted too long, lingered too much. My grip on the steering wheel tightened until I thought it might snap. I tailed Claudia to her real office afterward, watched her stroll inside like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just blown up our marriage over cappuccinos. Then I drove to my own office, told my assistant I was feeling better, and pretended to bury myself in logistics reports. But the truth? My head wasn't on shipping schedules. It was locked on one word: planning. That night, I acted like everything was normal. I asked her about her day, sat through her polished lies about client meetings and project deadlines. She was smooth, detailed, convincing, almost too convincing. Made me wonder how long she'd been practicing this double life. "How was your client meeting this morning?" I asked casually over dinner. "Exhausting," Claudia answered without missing a beat. "New campaign for a restaurant chain. They want everything changed at the last minute." Daniel glanced up from his plate. "Which restaurant, Mom?" For just a split second, I saw it panic flicker across her face. Then she recovered, quick and smooth. "Oh, it's still confidential. You know how these things work." Our son nodded and went back to his food. But I didn't miss that tiny crack in her act. It was the first visible sign that her lies were starting to get harder to maintain. Over the next week, I turned into a man with a mission. During lunch breaks and late nights, I started collecting evidence. Times, places, phone records from our shared account, credit card charges that didn't add up. Patterns began to form. The coffee shop had become their spot. Tuesdays and Thursdays, same corner table, same routine. I started taking photos from across the street. Nothing dramatic, just proof. Insurance for later. But the real breakthrough came when I remembered something about Claudia. She'd always been careless with technology. Same passwords for everything. Cloud accounts synced automatically. For a woman plotting to rob me blind, her security was laughable. From my office computer, I accessed her cloud storage. What I found made my stomach twist. Hundreds of text messages between her and Dwight, stretching back 8 months. Photos I never wanted to see. But worse than the pictures were the words. Conversations about me, about our marriage, about their plans. Preston works such long hours he doesn't notice anything. Claudia had written 3 weeks ago. I could probably move in with you and he'd think I was just staying late at the office. His reply, not yet. Wait until after the holidays. Let the kids have one more normal Christmas before you blow up their world. One more normal Christmas. As if our family was a company to be dissolved after the fiscal year. But the most damaging messages were recent. Just 2 days after I overheard them at the restaurant. He seemed suspicious last night, Claudia texted. Asked more questions than usual about my day. Maybe he's finally waking up. Dwight replied, we might need to accelerate our timeline. Her answer was like a knife. No, Preston's too trusting. Always has been. I could tell him the sky was green and he'd just ask what shade. We stick to the plan. Daniel graduates in May. Then we make our move. That's what she wrote. Like divorcing me was a chess match and I was too dumb to realize I was even on the board. I printed everything, messages, photos, call logs. I made copies and stored them in a safety deposit box at a bank across town. Then I called the best divorce attorney in the state, Rebecca Martinez. She had a reputation for protecting men's assets when marriages went off the rails. Mr. Wells, she said after reviewing my evidence, your wife has made several critical mistakes. First, she documented everything. Second, she's waiting, which gives us time to protect your interests. And third, she's underestimating you. What's our next move? I asked. Rebecca smiled. We're going to make sure that when she tries to take half of everything you've built, she walks away with nothing but regret. The hardest conversation of my life came on a Saturday morning in November. I'd asked Quentin Hayes, Claudia's younger brother, to meet me for coffee. Not at the Daily Grind. That place was tainted now. We met instead at a small diner on the edge of town where no one knew us. Quentin was a family therapist, 3 years younger than Claudia but far wiser when it came to people. He'd always been the reasonable one in her family, the guy who called out bad behavior no matter whose side it came from. He said as we slid into a corner booth. You look like hell. What's going on? I handed him a folder of printed messages and photos. Not the explicit stuff, I wouldn't put him through that, but enough to show exactly what his sister was planning. He read in silence, his face getting darker with every page. When he finally finished, he set the papers down and rubbed his face with both hands. How long have you known? He asked. 2 weeks, I said. I've been documenting everything since then. Jesus, Preston. I'm so sorry. He shook his head. I knew something was off with Claudia. She's been different at family gatherings. Distracted. Secretive. But I never imagined this. The kids don't know yet, I admitted. And I don't know how to tell them. Quentin leaned forward. Let me help with that. Daniel and Iris are going to need professional support through this. And they're going to need to understand none of this is their fault. We spent the next hour planning. Quentin would start easing the kids into the idea that difficult news was coming, without giving away details. He'd also help me figure out the right moment to sit them down. Most importantly, he agreed to serve as a character witness when this eventually went to court. There's something else, I said as we stood to leave. I need to secure my business assets before Claudia realizes what's happening. What do you mean? He asked. She's planning to take half of everything I've built, I explained. But I've got 63 employees who depend on those paychecks. I won't let her greed destroy their livelihoods. That afternoon, I met with my business attorney and accountant. Together, we restructured ownership, moving my personal shares into a trust. Completely legal, standard protections I should have put in place years ago. By Monday morning, my logistics company was untouchable. Claudia could try to grab half, but she'd discover the hard way that what she thought was hers had already vanished. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I'd been protecting my family from financial risk. Now I was protecting my employees from my wife. She used to complain that I spent too much time focused on business. Now that very focus was going to be her downfall. 3 weeks after discovering the truth, I made the decision that would change everything. It was a Tuesday morning. Claudia was in the bathroom humming while she did her makeup. Careful, happy, glowing in a way she hadn't been for me in months. She thought she was preparing for another client meeting. But I knew better. Breakfast with Dwight. Another round of lies. "I'll be late tonight," she called out, not even looking at me. Big presentation for the restaurant chain. Might not be home until after 10. The restaurant chain that didn't exist. The presentation that was really dinner with her boyfriend. "No problem," I said calmly. "I've got some late meetings myself." After she left, I sat in my truck in the driveway for 10 whole minutes, gripping the steering wheel and thinking about the phone call I was about to make. Once I did this, there'd be no going back. No reconciliation. No counseling. No working through it. This was the nuclear option. But she had already chosen nuclear the day she decided I was just a paycheck with legs. I called Rebecca Martinez. "I'm ready to file," I told her. "Are you sure, Mr. Wells? Once we serve her, she'll know you've been investigating." "I'm sure. And I want her served at her office, in front of her colleagues. I want everyone to know exactly who she really is." "That can be arranged," Rebecca said. "We'll have the papers ready by Thursday." That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I cooked dinner. Real dinner. Grilled steaks, roasted vegetables, mashed potatoes from scratch. Daniel raised an eyebrow when he saw the table. "What's the occasion, Dad? Can't a man cook for his family without an occasion?" I said, forcing a smile. But the truth was heavier. This might be one of our last normal family dinners, and I wanted it to be memorable for the right reasons. Claudia came home at 10:47 p.m., claiming her presentation had run long. She barely touched the plate I'd kept warm, too busy scrolling on her phone and smiling at messages I knew weren't from clients. "This looks wonderful," she said, distracted, obligatory. "Sorry I missed dinner with everyone." "Don't worry about it," I said, watching her type back what were clearly sweet nothings to Dwight. "There will be plenty of opportunities for family dinners in the future." She looked up at me then, maybe sensing something in my tone, but I kept my face neutral. Let her wonder. Let her believe she was still in control. After 20 years of marriage, I had become invisible to her. But invisible men see everything. And what I had seen was going to destroy her fantasy. Thursday couldn't come soon enough. At 2:15 p.m., the process server walked into Claudia's office and handed her the divorce papers. I know the exact time because Rebecca called me right after. "It's done," she said simply. "Your wife has been served." I was sitting outside Daniel's school, waiting for his basketball practice to end, when my phone lit up. "Claudia." I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again, and again. By the time Daniel jogged out, sweaty and tired, I had 7 missed calls and a string of frantic texts. "Where are you? Call me now. What the hell is this? You can't just disappear and ambush me like this." Daniel glanced at the buzzing phone as he got in the car. "Mom's really trying to reach you." "Yeah," I said, powering the phone off completely. "We'll talk to her at home." The drive back was tense. Daniel kept sneaking worried looks at me, sensing something big was happening. Claudia's car was already in the driveway when we pulled up. She'd clearly bolted from work, desperate to get ahead of this. I found her pacing in the kitchen, legal documents clutched in her hand. Her face red, eyes wild with a mix of rage and disbelief. Preston. She started the second she saw me. What is this? Some kind of sick joke? No joke, I said evenly, setting my keys on the counter. It's exactly what it looks like. You can't just file for divorce without talking to me first. We have problems, but we can work through them. This is insane. I stared at the woman who had spent months planning to destroy our family, now acting shocked that I'd beaten her to the punch. Like you were planning to work through them with Dwight? I asked. The color drained from her face. Genuine shock. As if she had forgotten actions have consequences. I don't know what you think you know, that I know everything, Claudia? I cut her off. The coffee shop meetings. The texts. The plan to wait until Daniel graduates so you can take half of everything I've built. I know you think I'm pathetic and boring. And I know you think Dwight is more of a partner than I ever was. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. She hadn't prepared for this. Not like this. Where are the kids? She asked suddenly, realizing Daniel and Iris weren't around. Quinn picked them up. They're spending the night at his place while we sort this out. You told my brother? She snapped. You told him about our personal business? Your brother deserved to know that his sister was planning to blow up 2 families for a midlife crisis. That's when the tears came. Not real tears. Performance. The same routine she'd probably used to manipulate me for years. Preston, please. She reached for my arm. We can fix this. I made a mistake, but we can get through it together. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. No, Claudia, we can't. Because this wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. And now I have my own plan. For the first time in our marriage, she looked at me with something close to respect. Not love, not affection. Just the recognition that she was no longer dealing with the pushover she'd married. She would never see me the same way again. And that felt exactly right. 2 days later, I sat with Daniel and Iris at Quinn's office. I'd wanted neutral ground. Somewhere safe where they could process the truth without feeling cornered. Daniel sat closest to me, 17 years old, trying hard to act like an adult even though I could see the scared kid underneath. Iris curled up on the couch, 14. Still young enough to hope this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Kids, I began. Your Uncle Quentin, and I need to tell you some things about what's been happening with your mom and me. Are you getting divorced? Daniel asked bluntly. Yes, direct, just like I'd taught him. Helpful but heartbreaking. Yes, I said quietly. We are. Iris let out a sound between a gasp and a sob. Quinn moved closer, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Why? She whispered. I thought everything was okay, and there it was, the moment I had been dreading. How do you explain betrayal to a 14-year-old without breaking her relationship with her mother? I took a breath and chose my words carefully. Sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people they love, I said gently. Your mom has been seeing someone else. She's been making plans that didn't include keeping our family together. Daniel's jaw tightened. For how long? Several months, I admitted. I knew something was wrong, he said quietly. She's been different, distracted, and lying about where she goes. Iris burst into tears, her face buried in her hands. Does she not love us anymore? She loves you both very much. I told them, and I meant it. Whatever Claudia had done to me, I knew she cared about the kids. This is about her relationship with me, not with you. Daniel swallowed hard. Where are we going to live? What's going to happen to us? You're going to live with me, I said firmly. In our house. Same schools. Same friends. I'll make sure your lives stay as normal as possible. What about Mom? Iris asked through tears. Your mom will always be your mom, Quentin added softly. She'll still be part of your lives, just differently than before. We sat together for another hour, answering questions as honestly as we could. Daniel was angry, not only at his mother but at the whole situation. Iris was heartbroken and confused, struggling to understand how the family she trusted could fall apart so suddenly. Dad, Daniel said as we were getting ready to leave, I want you to know I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Mom's been treating you badly for months, and I was starting to lose respect for you because you weren't doing anything about it. His words hit me like a punch to the chest. My son had been watching me accept disrespect. He'd been losing faith in me because I hadn't fought back. I should have acted sooner, I admitted. Maybe, he said, but you acted when it mattered. That's what counts. Iris hugged me tightly as we walked to the car. I love you, Daddy, she whispered. I love you too, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay. And for the first time in months, I actually believed it. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. The courtroom felt more like a business meeting than the end of an 18-year marriage. Claudia sat across the room with her attorney, looking smaller, defeated in a way I had never seen before. Her relationship with Dwight had already imploded. When faced with real life instead of a fantasy affair, he decided she was too much drama and vanished. Her attorney tried every angle to get more money, but Rebecca had been airtight. The protections we'd put in place held strong. In the end, Claudia walked away with her car, her belongings, and a modest settlement that would barely cover her for 2 years. Mr. Wells, the judge said, you've been awarded primary custody of both minor children. Mrs. Wells will have standard visitation rights. The property division stands as agreed. I nodded, feeling both relief and sadness. This wasn't the ending I wanted, but it was the one her choices had written. After the hearing, Claudia approached me in the hallway. She looked older, worn down. She said softly. I never meant for things to go this far. What did you mean for them to go? I asked. She didn't answer. We both knew the truth. She'd meant to use me until she didn't need me anymore, then discard me on her terms. The kids miss having you around more, I said. Partially true. They did miss her, but they were also angry at her for the lies. Can we try to do better? For Daniel and Iris? She asked. We can try, I agreed. But Claudia, they're not little anymore. They know what happened. It'll take time before they trust you again. She nodded, tears welling. I know I destroyed everything good we had. Yeah, I said simply. You did. 6 months later, Quentin texted me. Claudia had moved to another state, taken a job in Phoenix. She called the kids every week and visited once a month. But the easy closeness she'd once had with them was gone. She was trying, but she was rebuilding from zero. A hard adjustment for someone who'd always been adored. Daniel started his senior year with new maturity. He didn't take family stability for granted anymore. Iris was in counseling, slowly learning to trust again. Both kids chose to stay with me full-time. You did the right thing, Quentin told me one night as we watched Daniel at basketball practice. It wasn't easy, but you protected them when it mattered most. I nodded, watching my son drive to the basket with determination. He had learned something valuable from all of this, that sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that make you stronger. 2 years after the divorce, I found myself back at the same diner where Quentin and I had first discussed Claudia's betrayal. But this time, I wasn't there with problems. I was there to celebrate solutions. Daniel had been accepted to 3 colleges, including his first choice. His application essay had been about resilience and trusting your instincts when something feels wrong. The admissions counselor told him it was one of the most mature essays she'd ever read. Iris, now 16, was thriving. She had a boyfriend from her chemistry class. A respectful kid who shook my hand, looked me in the eye, and helped clear the dinner table without being asked. She had learned to value respect over charm, substance over smooth words. My logistics company had expanded into 5 states, partly because I had thrown myself into work during the darkest months, but mostly because protecting it had forced me to innovate in ways that made us stronger. You know what I'm proudest of? Quentin asked me over coffee. What's that? I said. The kids never saw you lose control. Even when everything was falling apart, I stayed focused on being their father. I won't lie. There were nights I sat alone in my truck after following Claudia to another secret meeting, and I felt like everything I'd believed about my life had been a lie. But instead of breaking down, I got angry, and then I got strategic. That anger became fuel, not destruction. It carried me through the legal battles, the painful talks with my kids, and the long process of rebuilding a life that no longer revolved around Claudia's lies. She still lived in Phoenix. She had a new boyfriend now, an accountant who treated her well and didn't try to step into my role with the kids. On their last visit, Iris had said, "She seems happier, more like the mom I remember from when I was little." "That's good," I told her, and I meant it. Whatever bitterness I once carried had burned out. What was left was indifference, and a focus on building the future rather than obsessing over the past. I'd even started dating again. Sarah, a business consultant I met through work, was divorced too, with a daughter about Iris's age. We connected over the struggles of single parenting and discovered we had more in common than either of us expected. "She's different from Mom," Daniel said after meeting her. "More direct, less dramatic." "Is that good or bad?" I asked. "Definitely good. Drama's overrated." Iris nodded in agreement. "Sarah treats you like an equal. Mom always acted like she was doing you a favor by being married to you." Out of the mouths of babes. That afternoon, driving home from the diner, I thought about how much had changed since the night I overheard Claudia's cruel words. Back then, I thought my world was ending. But really, it was just beginning. When I pulled into the driveway, Daniel's car was already there. He'd driven himself home from a college visit. Iris's bike leaned against the garage, meaning she was probably inside doing homework. My family was smaller now but stronger, built on truth instead of lies, respect instead of convenience, and love that didn't demand pretending to be someone else. And I realized something important that I'd first learned in that restaurant booth 2 years ago. Sometimes the worst thing someone can say about you is also the most freeing. Because once you finally know where you really stand, you can decide where you want to go.